Hi, everybody. It's Peter Selby from Business Drivers, and today is another podcast from our Releasing the Handbrake series. And today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Gaiti Rabbani. So one of the things we've been doing in these podcasts is interviewing interesting people, customers, clients, associates, as well as just business tips. And we are very blessed today to have someone with quite a unique business and quite a unique skill set. So welcome, Gaiti.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Oh no, pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure the listeners are going to find this fascinating. So, Gaiti, to get us going, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and where you've come from, and some of your work history and all of that sort of stuff, because people normally find that quite fascinating.
That's a really big question. How much time have you got?
Yeah, as much as you like. No rush. There's no rush.
Well, I am the founder and MD of Rabbani Collective, which is my business that I established here in Australia 5 years ago. Prior to that, my history is quite a long history of 3 decades of experience, starting from the UK, where I was born. After which I then moved to the Middle East. I spent 18 years of my life in Dubai, working in large corporates, in government sector, and then had the opportunity to come here to Australia, working with a luxury family business. Very unique experience. And then, as I mentioned, 5 years ago, decided to go it out on my own. So today I work in the people and culture space, and I'm a certified cultural intelligence professional. And yeah, thrilled to be here talking about my business.
So let's just go back to the Middle East a minute. That sounds fascinating. What on earth made you go to the Middle East?
Oh, look, it really was a moment of survival. I had moved from the UK, a little bit that I missed out there, back to Pakistan with my mum. At a slightly challenging time in her life and our lives. My father had passed away. I managed to entangle myself in a marriage in Pakistan, and I had my daughter there. And at some point I decided I wanted to leave and I needed to get out. There was a bit of a cultural dilemma, if we can call it that. And I somehow just landed in the Middle East, landed in Dubai. It felt like a welcoming place to be, and raised what I would call a third culture kid in Dubai.
That's a fascinating story. So you've left Pakistan, gone to the Middle East, and third culture kid. I like that. So tell us a little bit about your experience in the Middle East, what that was like, and that's quite interesting.
Yeah, look, when I arrived in Dubai, it was a village, and I'm very fortunate that I could be part of the growth of the Emirate. So I spent a good 12 years of my career there working for the government of Dubai on all the projects around diversification of the economy away from oil dependence. So it was a very fast-paced environment. It was a project environment, and you can imagine, otherwise, the Emirate would not be what you see today, a cosmopolitan hub, metropolis of such. And it was a tremendous experience. I'd say I had a slight love-hate relationship with the place. It does burn you out. It did burn me out. At some point realized I had to leave. But the experience I had there, Peter, quite frankly, you can't put on a resume. You really can't. When you're working in a market that is evolving and maturing and is growing at the speed at which Dubai was at the time, the kind of experiences we had, you really can't capture.
So you were working directly for the government?
I was for the new arm of the Dubai government. So this was new initiatives to encourage international businesses to come and set up base in the Middle East. It was a safe haven. They had tax breaks. So there were opportunities. I did a lot of work with the media segments. I did a lot of work with commodity sectors, which is how I fell into precious commodities and diamonds and gold and pearls and all things that glitter, and had the opportunity to meet Nicholas Paspaley in Australia. We were doing some projects together in the Middle East, and then that's where the opportunity to come to Australia came about.
Wow. So tell me, you arrive in the Middle East. Did you have did you have opportunity lined up before you got there, or it's just such a huge shift?
No, I didn't actually, Peter. So I arrived in Dubai with a toddler as a single parent, and it was a survival instinct, really. So I had to work my way up. And interestingly enough, it was a very difficult environment at the time. There was the oil boom, and there were a lot of ads in the papers asking for UK, US educated secretaries, which I decided, okay, quick, let's do a secretarial course, and started applying for jobs. But of course, what they meant by the UK, US educated was not my education. It was the white face, quite frankly, that they wanted. So it was not the friendliest work environment. It took me quite a while to break through that and land my first job. But once I did, from there, I just basically worked extremely hard and climbed my way through the ranks to the point where, when I left Dubai 18 years later, I was at the senior most level of government as an Asian expatriate female could be.
Wow. What a story. What a
It
story.
is, now that you ask me and I reflect on it. There's many chapters of my life, which, yeah, tremendous amount of experience there.
So this must enable you. I mean, that really is a corporate hard road that you've honed through, almost well, not an alien environment, but certainly not your firstborn country. Is that experience proved to be useful to you when you're working, when you've worked with other companies since then?
Oh, incredibly useful. But at the time when you're in it, you don't recognize the skill set that you're honing and the experience that you have working with, as you can appreciate, Dubai is a melting pot, many, many cultures, many nationalities, many different work styles and ethics.
Sure, yeah.
And I had, multicultural teams that I was managing, and multicultural management that I was reporting into. And working with Emiratis was fascinating in itself. So my role was very much bridging the international business community with the Emirati vision and management. So I was just one or two steps away from reporting to Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai himself. So there was quite a gap to be bridged there. And as I mentioned, you don't always appreciate that experience until you stop and take hold of it and say, oh, wow, okay. This is what I learned along the way, how to cut through a hugely male-dominated environment, how to be successful in a patriarchal society, how to harness that diversity and those skills and strengths that all those different nationalities and cultures brought to Dubai that perhaps weren't always recognized up front. So how do you tap into that and and get everyone working together effectively and efficiently to a successful outcome?
Well, I mean, that's a challenge in any environment, let alone the one you were in. What do you think made you successful there? I realise that's probably quite a wide question, but this would be interesting. This would be really interesting for people.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's several answers to that. The first one is really survival, Peter. As a single parent and a woman in a predominantly Muslim country, you find in the beginning, I didn't have many friends. And so it's very much I need to survive, I need to make things work, I need to set up a life for myself and my daughter. So it was very much survival. I think along the way, I have had a couple of really good mentors, and I've also had a few really good role models of what I don't want for myself and what I don't see for myself. So role models aren't always necessarily positive, but there's also, those are traits that I don't think I want. And somehow you manage to, through that experience, build yourself up. But as you know, the more you do and the better you become, the more that's expected of you. And I think I fell into that cycle in Dubai where the more I did, the more they wanted and the better they wanted it to be. And then they would promote me and I would be escalated to senior positions, and then you've got to learn more and do more. So a lot of my success was learning on the job and learning from people around me.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So, and 18 years is also no short spell. I mean, that must have been a big decision to move from there, from such an established position that you ended up in, to move to Australia. You know, that's a big call.
Yes, that's true. And I think at some point there was a realization that I wanted to put down roots somewhere, and Dubai is very temporary. It's, you know, even though I'd invested in property there, we had a home there, I raised my daughter there, she schooled there. We had to see her through high school, so she needed to finish her IB program. But also there was this sense that I wanted somewhere that would offer me more permanence, that my life wouldn't be sort of punctuated by these 4 yearly employment visa renewals. And so I guess that's part of what I was seeking. As I mentioned, I met the chairman and founder of Paspaley, and we had an opportunity there. I think we really connected, and there was an opportunity there to see how we could work together. So I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to come out here. Also, my daughter pursued her further education here, so she wanted to come to university in New South Wales. But unfortunately, it was a case of taking several steps back to move forward. And I guess that happens anywhere where you're working in a maturing market where, as I mentioned, you have all these tremendous opportunities that you can't really capture on paper. And then you come somewhere like Australia where everything is pretty neatly organized and everyone wants to fit your experience into a box. And I'm someone you really can't fit into a box after that wealth of experience. So there were challenges around adapting to this work environment. But of course, anywhere you go, you've got to kind of start fresh. I just feel really fortunate that 10 years on, I'm here and I'm actually doing a lot of work with refugee and asylum seeker groups and migrant professionals, and mentoring and helping them to enter into the local marketplace, because I feel I built up a lot of experience at that time, and I'm just fortunate enough that 10 years later I can share that now with others.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about that? That sounds really interesting. So I mean, that is very much cashing in on the skills and the experiences that you had in the Middle East, but obviously bringing a lot of good in the process. So maybe just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think it's around, if I'm to be very, very frank about this, I don't think I really had a career path that was set out. I didn't have time for that. I didn't have the opportunity to sit back and reflect and say, where do I really want to be? Where do I really want to go? And I found myself here in Australia working for a family business for 4 years or so, and then stepping out and wanted to go alone. And I remember sort of putting myself out there initially, and one of the first opportunities that came back to me was a forum or a seminar that we needed to deliver to Westfield management and all their retailers. And the topic that I was called in to present by a consultant actually was connecting with the Chinese customer. So it was all about this connecting across cultures. And because I had a tremendous amount of retail experience and I had a lot of multicultural experiences, they thought that I would be a good fit here. So I went in and supported them in doing this presentation. We had probably about 100 retailers present. And it just amazed me in that experience how all this sort of innate experience and competencies that I have in that cross-cultural understanding is actually something that people need. So I didn't actually realize it was a thing, quite frankly. And it was that gave me the realization that there is something here, there is a gap here that needs to be filled. People are trying to understand the mindset of the Chinese consumer, which to me came quite naturally because I've traveled extensively. I've spent quite a lot of time in China. So as I was representing the government of Dubai, I would find myself typically every 30 days in some international hotspot. So whether it was Shanghai, whether it was Tokyo, whether it was New York, I was constantly traveling. And of course, my own background is very multicultural. So I'm a British Asian ethnicity. So I didn't realize that this was actually a skill set that could be developed in a competency. And that whole experience started me on this journey of wanting to learn more. And so it's just a couple of years ago that actually I discovered I could get certified in cultural intelligence, which then I did. I looked up something called the Cultural Intelligence Center in the UK.